Assalamu alaikum. Previously, we had discussed about what is critical reading and what is its importance and what's the difference between reading comprehension and critical reading. We also discussed interpretation and description. In this lecture, we will discuss how we can read critically and what would be the process of reading critically. So let's move to the process, and then in the next lecture, we would discuss with an example how we can actually read critically. So this is again a theoretical video in which we will discuss the process of reading critically. Please listen to this carefully and maybe you can note down certain tips and tricks so that it helps you to analyze a story or analyze a text when we are doing so. Let's begin. So there are certain techniques of critical reading that involves a process from previewing, then writing, then critical reading. At least 2 times is kind of minimum, but we will discuss whatever suits you would be the ideal situation for you to critically read. Then we would move forward to summarizing the text and then at the end forming a critical response. So by previewing, we mean how we would start reading. Okay, so that would be the first step towards reading. And in previewing, we would actually plan the whole process of reading. So it would also relate to skimming, as we already know what is skimming. We would just go through the headings and then pictures or tables in the text and read the title and try to understand the meaning of the text. And we would form certain expectations that what the text would be about. Okay, we would decide how much time we will give to the reading, and then we would think who the author is and what are his previous works, and we would try to see what are the new words that we might see that in the text that we do not know. So that would be general overview reading of the text, in which we just try to make the things ready for actual reading or critical analysis or critical reading. Okay, so this is the goal of previewing is to obtain a general grasp of the text, to have a certain idea that what the text is about. Okay, we can do that by understanding the title and with understanding who the author is, and then we just go through the headings and the pictures to form an overview and overview idea what the text is about. Okay, and then we would decide the plan that how we actually want to pursue the text, how we want to read the text. Okay, so this is the first step of previewing the text, yani having an overview of the text before the critical reading or the actual process of reading. Then we have writing. Okay, so before moving on to the actual writing or understanding, we would try to understand or mark the words that we think are important. Okay, the way we would try to divide it into components or parts, we would see what are certain headings, what are certain words that we do not understand, or maybe on a separate piece of paper we would form a map or an idea that what the text is about. Okay, so that would be rough sketch of what we are going to read, and then the whole process is gonna be. So this is just the starting of the process, and then writing into bullet points, whatever the main idea is. Okay, so then comes the actual phase of reading. So when we're talking about reading, you would find so many tips and tricks. Someone would say that you should sit in a silent atmosphere, you should avoid any kind of distractions while you're reading, you should give it proper time, you should do this and this and that. But what I have to suggest to you is what works best for you. Okay, all of us are different. Some of us prefer some environment and others of us would prefer a different atmosphere, and whatever is your comfortable zone, go there. Okay, try to avoid the things that might distract your focus from reading, and try to be in an atmosphere that would help you focus. Maybe if you like to read with some kind of slow background music, so do that. Okay, if you prefer silence, then get into that atmosphere, whatever suits you and you think is the best way that you can read. Try to be in that atmosphere and just start reading. Okay, so first all you have to do is start reading and then try to see what you understand from that. Then gradually we would move forward to second reading, where we would reread the material slowly, and then we would try to understand what the content material is and what is its structure. Okay, so first you would give it one reading, a general reading, try to understand what you whatever is written, Then in the second reading, you would understand the material and maybe divide it into parts and then structure the passage. Okay, so in the second reading it is more careful reading and it is more slower. Again, whatever suits you. If you again prefer a fast or rapid reading, you can do that. Okay, but ideally this would go that now you would put in some extra effort to find out the things that you might have missed in the first reading. Okay, so if you reread it and see that okay, this is the point that I did not understand in the first reading, now I'll do it again and I'll understand these things. Okay, now you have to understand the content completely and understand what the author has given it as a structure, and then you would try to analyze that structure. Then after we have read the text carefully, there could be three types of responses that we can give to the text. Number one, we can restate the text. Okay, by restating we would be kind of rephrasing the text and talking about the original topic that the text is about. Okay, we could write it in multiple ways and we could just say what the title or what the topic was about. Then we would describe the text and try to identify different aspects of the text. Okay, in what format it is written and what is the layout, what is the structure of the writing and the text. All these things we will try to describe. From previous lecture, I hope you remember what is the difference between description and interpretation. Now that would help you here. Now previously we were talking about description and interpretation of a picture. Now we would see how we can describe and interpret a text. So when we are describing a text, we will try to identify different aspects and describe the text. Now when we are analyzing the text, that would be called basically interpretation. What is the overall meaning? What the author wants to say? What the author wants to portray as a message? What is the social message that the author is giving? So all these things that will be included in the interpretation part. Okay, so this is how we can respond to the text after reading a text. So you remember the layout. After previewing, we did a sketching and writing, and then we read it carefully, critically, and now we are responding to the text. And that responding to be can be in multiple ways. We can restate, we can describe, and then we can interpret. After we have done that, we can pull out the main points of the text and write them down into a summary. So whatever the text is, for example, we are reading a story. Now we would try to summarize the story in few words. Okay, this is how we critically analyze. We would summarize the process of writing and just briefly tell what the passage was about. Then we would form a critical response. For critical response, we would analyze the text, interpret it, and then form a synthesis. In analysis, we basically develop the parts and try to examine them critically and closely. We would carefully see that which part has what message, and then we are giving it a whole shape and how we combine all those parts and get one whole message. Okay, for example, there's a story or there's a book you are reading. Different parts of the story or different scenes of the story would portray a different message. Okay, and how they are formed into one shape, and then we are examining or understanding them more closely, we would understand how we can actually analyze the text. Okay, we would try to see what the author's argument is and what is the structure of the text. Then we would examine the argument structure. Okay, what are certain claims and assumptions that the author is portraying, what the author's beliefs are, what is the author's opinion, what is author's inference when he is giving a certain claim or fact or evidence. Okay, whatever examples the author has given, why he has given those examples. That would be the part of analysis. Then we would look for different types of evidence. Maybe we would try to find out facts, then opinions. Then we would try to see what are the appeals of to beliefs and deeds. Okay, and what are some appeals to emotions. This is in some particular, for example, when we are reading a story. Okay, as we would do in the course, we would see how the author is trying to appeal our emotion, how different emotions are triggered after reading that story. Okay, what are certain opinions that he has given into the text. There is a video on this channel about facts and opinions. You can watch that so you have a clear idea that what different types of facts and opinions a story or a text might portray. Okay, so we would look for different types of evidence and try to analyze each of them critically. We would do that better with an example when we are analyzing a story. This is just an overview that this is what we would be doing when we are trying to find different types of evidence. Then we would see whatever evidence is given, how reliable it is it accurate, is it relevant to the context, and what does it actually represent, and is it sufficient or not. Okay, so we just cannot rely if there is evidence and we just accept it blindly. We cannot do that. We'll have to find if it is reliable evidence. Then in the final stage, we would interpret the text. Okay, by interpreting the text, we would mean we would break it down into different parts. Then we would see what the author claims and what are the evidence it gives to support it. And then we would infer anything that goes beyond that inference. We would try to understand what are the claims that author put and what evidence it suggests, and if the evidence is reliable enough, then we would form certain type of interpretation from the text, that this text means this thing. Then finally, after interpretation, we would synthesize the text. Okay, now when we have broken down the text, analyzed it, interpreted it, now we should make connections between all of those. As I discussed earlier, we would now see how all those parts are formed together to give us one message. Okay, these are certain things we can ask ourselves before finally concluding the text, that what the author's message was, what the underlying idea is behind the text, and this is how we synthesize the text. This is another approach that you can use when you're critically reading, that is called SQ3R. That would mean survey, question, read, recall and review. Okay, this could again be pretty simple. अगर आपको पहली वाली बात ज़्यादा थोड़ी मुश्किल लग रही है तो आप simply इसको इस तरह से break down कर सकते हैं. Again, both are ultimately the same things. You just give it a survey overview and then you ask yourself certain questions. Read the text, recall your previous memories and previous experiences and what is written in the text, then review the whole text as whole and form connections. Okay, so this is basically an approach and strategy to read. So when you are a critical reader, you have to remember that you don't just read into the author's ideas and you just do not memorize the text. Okay, you understand what the author wants to say and where does the author stand about a particular topic, about a particular opinion, what the author's point of view is. Okay, and what minor or major details or evidences the author gives to support his idea. Okay, and ultimately we'll have to understand what is the final point of view that the author is suggesting. That's it for this lecture. I hope you are now familiar with the process of critical reading. Now, when we start reading the story, then we will try to analyze it critically. Okay, I hope you understand and note down all these points. Maybe you can have a brief notes with you that what are certain steps when you are critically reading. Because in a live lecture, I would be asking you what steps would we follow and which step would involve what strategies. Okay, so good luck. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.